Maybe you just watched the Odyssey. If you did, you might have noticed that big wooden horse that was kind of important for the plot of the movie. Or maybe you clicked the video because you got a sketchy email, clicked on the link, downloaded something, and now the IT department at your job is telling you to research Trojan horse attacks. If that sounds familiar, you are in the wrong place, but if the big wooden horse thing sounds interesting, feel free to stick around with the rest of us. I'm going to tell you where Christopher Nolan's idea of the Trojan horse came from. That big stupid horse has quite a long history, although it might not be as long as you actually think. If you, understandably, thought that our knowledge of the Trojan horse comes from the Odyssey, Homer's most famous, or maybe his second most famous epic poem, he only had two, if he even existed. Anyways, if you think that's where we learned about it from, you would be right. Kind of. You see, the horse is mentioned in the Odyssey, but barely. Like literally just a couple of lines alluding to a wooden horse filled with soldiers that was brought into the citadel, allowing the Greeks to sack Troy. And that summary is almost the same length as the mention in the poem. The horse clearly existed in the cultural zeitgeist, with it being depicted in artwork such as vases dating back to the 7th century BC. However, the main literary reference to the Trojan horse is from the Aeneid, a poem I think Christopher Nolan might have been told about. And I say told about because I'm not entirely sure he actually read the entire Odyssey, let alone any other ancient poetry. The Aeneid, composed by the Roman poet Virgil approximately 700-ish years after the Odyssey, tells the story of the Trojan survivor Aeneas, who escaped to eventually become the ancestor of the Romans. Like the horse that is incorporated into it, the story itself wasn't fully new. Virgil just helped give it literary form. Regardless, the poem was important because it helped tie the history of Rome into the legendary Greek and wider Mediterranean history that long predated their rise to become the dominant power of the region. It also provides a mythological reason for why Rome and Carthage are always fighting. Anyways, the Trojan horse in the movie is heavily influenced by Virgil's interpretation of the Trojan horse, which is to say, our first full description of the horse. Big horse, made of fir planks, filled with soldiers, intended to be perceived as an offering to Athena or a gift to Troy, and the rest of it I'll obviously get to later. Odysseus was legendarily tricky, and some Trojans doubted the gift. You could say they looked a gift horse in the mouth. Sorry. For example, the priest Laocoon begged the Trojans to not bring the horse inside the city. In frustration after they wouldn't listen, he threw his spear at the horse, and was promptly devoured by a pair of sea serpents sent by Poseidon. They also killed his sons, just in case. Turns out, having Poseidon on your team is a good thing. It would probably be pretty bad to piss him off. It might make your journey home take 10 years or so. That would be quite an odyssey. At this point, the main opposition was out of the way, excluding Princess Cassandra, who nobody listened to. That wasn't really her fault, though, as everyone thought she was insane. She'd been cursed by Apollo to give prophecies that came true, but nobody would ever believe her, which is just kind of an average punishment for saying no to hooking up with a god. Anyways, nobody was listening to the qualified people saying, maybe we shouldn't bring the big foreboding horse left behind by the tricky Greeks into the city, and the Trojans decided to bring the horse into the city. Of course, as you know, the soldiers came out at nighttime and killed everyone. Well, not quite everyone, actually. Obviously, Aeneas, that's why it's called the Aeneid, escapes the city and basically goes on his own version of the Odyssey. Oh, and the Greeks also took some slaves. A couple of things worth highlighting here. First of all, Virgil is writing at a time when Rome was the predominant power in the Mediterranean. He was literally friends with Rome's first emperor. Conceptualizing the Greeks as treacherous is in his best interest, especially if Rome is to be understood as a long-term successor to Troy through the lineage of Aeneas. So even if the story of the horse had a long tradition, the literary conceptualization in the Aeneid is making specific points that may follow Roman interest. Nolan is certainly influenced by this. In the Odyssey, Odysseus does a number of things that are conceptualized as bad, or mistakes, acts of hubris, dishonor, you know what I mean. But the horse episode is not heavily emphasized as one of them. However, I did appreciate his glimpse of the experience inside the horse, waiting for days. I'd never really thought about having to go to the bathroom inside of it while you're crammed in with a bunch of other dudes. That's a brief history of the Trojan horse with a reasonable number of asides. Let me know if you have any more questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. I love breaking out the history and classics degree, and see you soon.